everybody's favorite day of the calendar year is when report cards come out, right? Like, that's the way this is supposed to work. Oh, what's even better than your own report card that's probably failed? Your team report cards. It's time to grade the draft. We're doing something no one has ever done in the history of podcasts, and we're doing it right now on Zero Blitz. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. Frank and Fitz on Zero Blitz. Frank, we got the call today. The call came in, all right? We spent all weekend, and I got to say thanks to everybody that took the time to watch Yahoo's live stream. We had a blast. We did a bunch of draft coverage. You and I were out there giving emojis to every pick. Really cool feature in the app. Proud of the work we did over the weekend. Yesterday, didn't consume anything. And then this morning, the call came in, and it was, we need draft grades. Are you ready, my friend? Like, this is such a weird exercise because let's be real. Every fan wants their team to get an A, and their rivals to get Fs all the way across the board. Like right now, Raiders fans are convinced it was a great draft, one of the best of all time, and that everybody else in the AFC West is absolute trash. Like that is the exercise we're up against.
The one thing about draft grades, I'll say, I tweeted this out yesterday when Charles McDonald put out his draft grades, is I like draft grades. Everybody freaks out about them. So you can't draft a class until 5 years down the road. Context is essential in life. You realize that the grades aren't the final grades necessarily. They're a snapshot of where we are right now, done by really, really smart people who are into this stuff, who study this stuff, and can tell you, hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a really good draft. It might not end up that way. We might in 5 years give the Steelers an F. But right now, as we sit here in late April, it is worthwhile to say the Steelers had a good draft based on all these experts. The same reason I like the way too early top 25s in college football and basketball. I know it's going to change. I know it's not gospel, but it is a very illuminating exercise. We can learn something from this. I like draft grades. I'm ready. I'm excited for it.
So to recap, I love the draft and don't like draft grades. Frank is met on the draft, but loves the grade. We are like opposites right now. We're the odd couple on this entire experiment. By the way, did you watch day 3 of the draft? Because I did. Like I'm that dumbass. I watched day 3 of the draft.
The NFL editor Joey Galino is not going to let me have the Saturday off. So I all 6 hours. I was in 6, 7, 8, 10, 12. I don't even know how many hours. Yes, watched it all the way until Mr. Irrelevant, who I can't remember, is the Alabama safety, whatever. Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes, I watched the entire draft from beginning to end because it's kind of my job, and I like my job.
I felt bad for my buddies at ESPN that were doing the coverage day 3. Like I watched, because I got a lot of friends on that show that are great, and Field was kicking ass, but they had a cover band right behind him that was just wailing on Motown hits. So like they're yelling, trying to break down some offensive lineman nobody's ever heard of, while you got like a lady in the background that was she was great, but she was going for it. Like it was distracting. I have a sneaking suspicion next year, the first question they're going to ask on the broadcast is like, hey guys, where's the party stage? Because we don't want to be by the cover band.
Far away from that as possible, yeah. But look, the one thing I push back on the draft, I do like the draft well enough. I don't like the production of the draft necessarily. Like day 3 is for the nerds. Like if you're watching day 3 of the draft, you are an absolute football nerd. You are breaking down the tight ends from Central Connecticut State, and you don't really need the nonsense of like, let's go to Japan where we're going to make the Patriots pick. Like, no, just have guys like Louis Riddick and Matt Miller on there and all them just breaking it down. Like every single pick, just play it to the nerds. We don't need to get a casual audience involved by sending the picks to outer space and stuff.
Well, I mean, unless they ask me to make one, in which case, if the Raiders call, it's a perfect idea. But otherwise, you're right. Like, we just want the breakdown. Speaking of the breakdowns, it is time. We are going to break down. We are going to grade every single draft, every single team, and we're going to do it by division, right? So we had a bit of an argument coming into the show about whether most people start with the NFC or the AFC. I, as a homer, believe that the AFC is always shoved to the end, but I'm gonna couch it as saving the best for last. So we're gonna start with the NFC. We're gonna work our way across country, and then we're gonna go to the AFC and do the same. We will start, good friend, with the NFC East. All right. So to make it easy for you, if you're listening to this, you just want to skip ahead so you can yell at us and tell us we're absolute morons. If you want to skip ahead, it's going to be the NFC East. We're going to go in alphabetical order. You see how that works? So we're going in alphabetical order, I guess, by team nickname, because we start with the Commanders. We start with Washington, the Commanders. All right. So the Commanders draft, by the way, not for nothing, we were going to learn about this team, Frank, right? We were going to figure out exactly who they are and their identity. And I think that for a team that, frankly, felt like they had 732 picks in the second round alone, I thought they did really well. We all know Jaden Daniels was going to be their pick at number 2, but they get Johnny Newton, they get Mike Samerstill, somebody I like a lot, Ben Sinnott, the tight end out of Kansas State. Like, they went on a run in the second round where they got a bunch of players that people like.
Yeah, I give the Commanders an A. I mean, starting off, I just think Jaden Daniels was the right pick there. You wondered if they were going to overthink it. Look, Drake May would have been a fine pick there too, and I understand people arguing May would have been the better pick. I like Jaden Daniels. His production at LSU is just through the roof. You got to like that pick. Don't overthink it. Don't trade down. Don't just pick the guy. Jaden Daniels, great pick. And then I thought the Zerjon Newton pick to start the second round was great for them. He's a very disruptive defensive tackle. I thought he should have been a first round pick. I thought the Commanders got good value on him. He really helps kind of rebuild that defensive line, which was a strength of theirs for a while. It's getting a little older. Some pieces have gone elsewhere. Now they've kind of restocked the shelves there. Like you said, all the second round picks are good. Stanot, this tight end, I really liked him coming into the draft. I gave him an A. I really like this Washington draft. It sets them up really, really well for this rebuild that's kind of getting going right now.
I'll give him an A- because I think you're too willy-nilly with the A's, right? Like, we got to have a little bit of wiggle room here. So
I didn't give him any. I'll say this. We're starting with an A, but I did not give many of them.
Oh, that is the heck of a tease. I'll give him an A for every reason you just mentioned. And by the way, I think Jaden Daniels has the opportunity to be absolutely spectacular. So now we go to the Dallas Cowboys. Got a lot to get through here. So the Dallas Cowboys second up on our list. And look, so I need a little nuance here. I need everybody to just understand where I'm coming from. I think that this draft for the Cowboys was an A, maybe even an A+.
Wow.
I really liked this draft.
Really?
Yeah, I 100%. I really like, look, I think Cooper Beebe has a chance to be a very good player for him. Guyton made a ton of sense on the offensive line. Nealand is value as an edge rusher right there. I thought it was a really good draft. Everybody's obsessed over the running back position and obsessed over the concept of all in. I think they did a really nice job of going best player available in a way that still helps their team when they were on the clock. Do I think that they have made their team drastically better right now going into this season? No. I think the Cowboys, this is a weird part of it. I give the Cowboys draft an A+. I give the Cowboys offseason so far a B. I don't have the problem with it. But I also think the Cowboys are now stuck in a system where they're going to have to rely on Dak to be the heavy lifter, to be great for them, which means their overall season is looking like a C- because we don't know what the contract situation for Dak is going to be and the contract situation for CD. And the only way that they can succeed is if those guys absolutely go off, which is only going to make them more expensive. So the future of the Cowboys looks murky. But right now, this season of the Cowboys, I'm all in on the approach.
I gave the Cowboys a C. I would have liked to have seen them be more all in right now. Get what you are in a Super Bowl window. You can win right now. Tyler Guyton's going to be a good player probably, but he's pretty raw. I'm not sure exactly. He's an impact guy. He's a rookie. I did like Cooper Beebe. I thought that was a good pick. Nealand might take some time, though. It's a big step up in competition for him. And the no running back thing bothers me. They don't have an answer at running back. They've come to an agreement. Ezekiel Elliott's coming in. If you've seen Ezekiel Elliott any of the past 3 seasons, you know he's not exactly the superstar he was when he was drafted. He's not rushing for 1,500 yards for you. So it did bother me that they weren't more all about the impact player right now. This is a Cowboys team I thought should have went for it. I thought they should have gotten guys who can contribute right away. They didn't really do that. Look, Tyler Guyton might be a great player down the road. All these guys might really develop well, and that's good for the Cowboys' future, but I wanted them to be more all in right now. That's why I gave them a C. I did not love this draft for the Cowboys.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, we're obsessed about the running back, but what if they just didn't like the running backs that were available in free agency?
Well,
what if they didn't like the running backs in the draft?
There had to be one running back in this world they liked. Like, there had to be one running back somewhere in the draft or free agency. Go get that guy. Don't just sit back on your head. So their running back room is a mess right now. It is terrible. And for a team that wants to be balanced with Mike McCarthy, I don't know that this is going to work necessarily. It's the worst running back room in the league right now, and that's not good for a team that likes to run the ball.
Well, I think at the end of the day, they looked around and said, fudge it. We don't care. We're just going to put everything on Dak, and Dak is going to have an MVP caliber season, which, by the way, I think he's capable of. Like, I still think the Cowboys pattern out to me to be a double-digit win team. Have they figured out what's going to get them over the top to win the Super Bowl? No, but like, that we can worry about in the playoffs. This whole death of the Cowboys presumes that they're going to finish with a losing record or barely make the playoffs. No, this feels to me like right now, they're the best team in their division. They've got the best roster in their division. They've got a good shot at going into the playoffs with a very high seed. What more could you ask for? Like, yes, I'm with you that maybe they didn't get a great solution at running back, but I also think that they got the best. They went best player available. I can't fault a team, Frank, that goes best player available never failed anybody. And I think that they did that. All right. So
I'll give you that, but I just wanted to see. Look, the all-in thing is the all-in thing. I get it was kind of overdone, but it still should be their approach because this Super Bowl window is not going to last forever.
I'm going to keep my praise going. The Philadelphia Eagles might get an A+++. And look, if there was a best draft in the Eagles in this year's draft, the Eagles have to be one of the teams we consider for the second straight year. And this becomes really important given the contracts they've given out to their wide receivers and their quarterback. We all know they have to draft well. Well, they came in with a need at corner. And because of the run on quarterbacks early, Frank, corner was sitting there. They were able to take their pick of whichever corner they preferred. They went Quinion Mitchell. But then in the second round, Cooper DeJean just sitting there. They got to move up a little bit for him, but Cooper DeJean just sitting there. I love this. Aeneas Smith later in the draft. I think a good pick. Will Shipley, somebody they don't need a lot out of, but they can get something out of long term. Jeremiah Trotter, the linebacker out of Clemson, was one of the picks everybody was excited for day 3. Like, I think the Eagles just sat there and was like, holy, I cannot believe this. The board is falling to us. Like the football gods turned around and they just like longingly looked in the eyes of the Philadelphia Eagles and they kissed them in a way that makes the rest of the league uncomfortable.
I do like how you're keeping it clean and we're not having an explicit podcast today. Look, part of me says this overblown praise of Howie Roseman is just so out of control. I mean, Howie Roseman stops at Starbucks for a latte when there's no line in the drive-thru. Every NFL writer is like, the NFL did it again. They let Howie have everything. Like, he's the greatest of all time. Like, no matter what Howie Roseman does, as long as he wakes up on the right side of the bed, NFL writers think that he is walking on water, and it's really overdone at times. That said, Howie Roseman had a really, really good draft, and I gave them an A for every reason you said. Look, when need meets best player available, those are perfect picks, and I thought they made 2 of them. Quinion Mitchell, I thought could have gone in the top 12 or 13.
Yep.
He falls to the Eagles in the 20s. Perfect match. They need cornerbacks. And then Howie gets aggressive, moves up for Cooper DeJean, who could have been a first-round pick easily. A very multi-talented player out of Iowa. Again, they fit their needs. Howie was moving, like they made 9 trades, the most since has ever been tracked. They've tracked draft trades all the way back to 1990, the most ever. Very, very active, picked up some picks for the future, got some guys late in the draft, as you talked about, Trotter and all these guys who day 3, good dart throws, smart dart throws. Some of these guys are going to pay off for the Eagles. You have to give them an A. I get it. From my perspective anyway, that the Howie Roseman praise is out of control. But if you're giving Eagles anything but an A here, you really are trying too hard.
The Eagles get an A in that way that's like they walked into the classroom, they sat in the front row, they raised their hand first and just got everything right. And the rest of the class is just pissed, just sitting there. They're like,
I was that guy in the back of the class, right? My professors at University of Wisconsin, I wasn't even in the back of the class. I was back in the dorm playing Madden. So
I was going to say, if you were in the back of class, you made it closer than I did because like I actually forgot to show up most of the time. But what are they doing making classes that early? It's not my fault. Yeah. All right. So from the A's and the heaping praise, the New York Giants next up on our grade list. And for me, Frank, it's kind of a C. And it's a C with the acknowledgement that Malik Neighbors, I think, has the chance to be one of the best wide receivers in this class. Obviously, everybody loves him. We thought they might go quarterback, and I respect a team that has the shot. For all the speculation, they're going JJ. JJ was sitting right there for him, and they're like, nah, we're good. We're fine. And they went Malik, and I have no problem with that. Don't reach at the quarterback if you don't love him. It just feels like Tyler Nubin's a guy that, eventually could turn out to be a pretty good player, but is a safety in the second round going to suddenly bridge the gap between where the Giants are and where the Giants want to be? Like Andrew Phillips is a guy that could develop into being somebody that's good in a couple of years. Will there even be the same regime? Like I thought they got okay players, but there's no immediate impact sensation to any of this for me.
Yeah, I gave the Giants a B because they didn't reach on quarterback, and they took Malik Neighbors, who is an incredible prospect at receiver. Marvin Harrison overshadowed him a little bit, but we all know Malik Neighbors is that kind of game-breaking receiver. Giants really haven't had since Odell Beckham was in his prime. This is really good pick for me. And the fact that, you're right, they looked at J.J. McCarthy on the board and said, we're not in love with this guy, because I've said a million times, you're drafting quarterback 6th overall, you're getting married. You're going down with the ship, right or wrong. And that regime for the Giants said, no, this is not our guy, or neither is Michael Penix or Bo Nix or anybody else. We are going to stick to our board. Malik Neighbors. I like the guys they drafted second, third round. I think Neighbors helps him at safety. He's really good out of Minnesota. Andrew Phillips is fine for me. Helps at cornerback. They needed some secondary help. So I did like those picks. But the fact that they went Neighbors over just reaching on any quarterback when they still have Daniel Jones making a lot of money, they said, let's run it back with Daniel Jones. Was good 2 years ago, was bad last year, coming off the ACL. Let's just see what happens. And then next year we could draft a quarterback. There's plenty of quarterbacks in next year's draft. That's why I gave them a B.
But there's, and I'm with you, every player you just mentioned when we were doing the emoji process, I gave a fire to. I like the players. I just didn't walk away from the draft feeling like the Giants had ascended through this process. My only caution with Daniel Jones is that if you look, Nate Tice already put out his way too early top 25 of 2025. One quarterback made that list, and it wasn't Shedeur or Sanders. I think next year's quarterback class, right now as we sit today, and I realize that, we didn't know at this point a year ago that Jaden Daniels was going to become who he is. So I understand this. But that being said, we go into next year's draft feeling like it is lean. So with Daniel Jones, I think they're going to be stuck for 2 years. So Malik Neighbors better make a big difference for this team. I think that's why Giants fans might be frustrated, but I'm with you. I give them some credit there. So we've wrapped up the NFC East. I would say, we didn't talk about doing this in advance, but I would say the biggest winner of the NFC East would be the Philadelphia Eagles. Best draft of the division to me. The worst draft of the division to me might be the Giants. I think you'll say the Cowboys, but I'll say the Giants. Cowboys. Even though the Giants was good, I think all of these teams drafted well. So I say Giants, you say Cowboys?
Yes, that's correct. Picking winners, losers at the end of each division, that is how I'd go. Yes. And the Eagles have to be the winner, right? Like this is, the Commanders are really good. You could talk me into that, but I think the Eagles it was a really, really good draft for them.
All right, so now we move to the NFC North because we have the NFC bias, and we're going to continue to delay the AFC conversation. The NFC North, Frank Schwab, we will start because our alphabet goes by a team mascot. We will start with the Bears. All right, the Bears, who became the first team in modern NFL draft history to take a quarterback and a wide receiver in the top 10 of the same draft. It has never happened before, and this continues what I think is an absolute complete rebuild. I think when you look at the Chicago Bears and where they are right now, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and Kieran Amagachi, my brain's still fried from the weekend, all have the shot to be almost immediate impact guys, right? I loved this draft for Chicago. I give it an A. I love this offseason for Chicago. I give it an A. And I think the Bears are squarely in the wild card conversation going into this season.
Absolutely. I gave the Bears an A as well. I talked about this when I wrote winners and losers, that they've done the best job of setting their rookie quarterback up for success of any team in recent memory. Even CJ Stroud, he ended up being really, really good, but the situation wasn't great. He just made it great. I think Caleb Williams walks into a great situation. You can make the argument that DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze is the best top three at receiver in the entire league. They still have a good tight end in Colt Kmet. DeAndre Swift comes aboard. I love that signing, but he's still a quality running back. Amagaji comes in. He could be a very good tackle for them, even right away. I mean, we all knew the story about him coming out of Yale, so he was kind of a known asset. If he stays healthy, he could be really good for them. I don't love the pick of the punter, Terez Paylor, in the 4th round. I get he's a really, really good punter, but when you have limited draft assets to go punter in the 4th round was, I don't know. But despite that, I give them an A because I think they looked at the 9th pick and just said, whatever, we're not going to reach on a pass rusher, even though we need one. We're not going to worry about offensive line, even though we could use that. Odunze would be the number 1 wide receiver in many drafts. He fell to us. Let's make our strengths stronger. Let's go for the receiver. I love that pick at number 9. I thought it was great value. A for the Bears. How could you give them anything else, really?
Yeah, and I'm going to grade the punter as part of a group project. Like there's one person in every school group project that really didn't do anything. The punter's that. Like I'm just keeping him out of the conversation. We go next.
By the way, we just yada over the quarterback too. Caleb Williams is a stud. Like and they got him without having to have the worst record in the NFL. It was a brilliant trade for them last year. That's involved in a draft grade 2, where they pulled off this marvelous trade with the Carolina Panthers. Ended up getting a 1st overall pick, ended up getting a heck of a prospect of Caleb Williams. It's not just them building around this guy. He is going to be the guy, and they could finally get off this hamster wheel at quarterback.
Next up in the division, the host of this year's draft, Detroit, the Lions, who, by the way, did an incredible job hosting it. Really great moment for the city, really great moment for the draft. And by the way, a really good draft to me. Terrion Arnold was some people's top corner, was still sitting there for them at 24. So they were able to take the guy that they wanted there. Ennis Rakestraw, another corner. I really like Rakestraw. I think he has a chance day one to come in and be a starter. So we knew that they had needs at corner. They addressed those needs. And a late round pick that I really like. I don't say this often because if you're in the late rounds, you're in the late rounds. But Mekhi Wingo out of LSU, I was stunned he was still there at 6. I would have thought he was around a 4th round pick. So to me, getting Mekhi Wingo that late was a substantial win for them too. This is an A draft to me for Detroit.
Yeah, I gave him a B+. I mean, just because it didn't jump off the board at me, but they did what they had to do. Like you said, Terrion Arnold, great pick because, again, it's almost like we talked about the Eagles. When the best pick available also fills your biggest need, that's great, and that does that for the Lions, who have just loaded up a cornerback this offseason. They said, we're throwing all the numbers we can at this position. It's going to get better, and it really might. Rakestraw, a good pick after the first round. As you talk about Wingo, Charles McDonald loved that pick. You love that pick. I got to love that pick too, right? Like it's a really good value pick in the 6th round for the Lions, who just attack defense. They understand what they need to get them over the hump, unlike maybe the Cowboys. That's why I gave them a B+. Could have easily gave them an A- even. This was a good, solid draft for the Lions, who crushed the draft last year and did a good job again this year.
So where are you on the Green Bay Packers draft grade? Because Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle out of Arizona, 1st round. Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M, the linebacker, 2nd round. He fell a little bit because of some off the field that he was involved in, and a 4-wheeling accident this offseason that I think has teams just sort of wondering where he is right now on everything. Very good player, but he fell a little bit. Javon Bullard out of Georgia, safety, another guy that sort of fell a little bit compared to where expected. And then Marshawn Lloyd, a running back in the 3rd round, that great, but fumbles a bunch. Like there's a but on a lot of these guys. So now that I've tried to sway your answer, what's your grade on the Packers?
I gave them a B, and maybe I was a little too nice, but I see, look, their organizational philosophy is they're high on off-the-ball linebackers, like not many teams are. They really like their offensive line to be strong. So I get the Jordan Morgan pick over a Cooper Jejin, who every Packers fan wanted that guy from Iowa. And the great reaction of the Packers fan on the ESPN broadcast when they picked Jordan Morgan. But he's going to help. He's going to help Jordan Love develop, going to help that offense develop. But I think Packers fans looked at it like, our offense is set, let's help the defense. I think it kind of did that. Again, Cooper, good player, but I don't know that he's necessarily the impact guy I want. That's not a position I'm really drafting in the 2nd round there. They really liked him. And even Marshawn Lloyd is a boomer bust pick. He's a guy fumbles a lot. He doesn't have great vision. I'm not sure he's going to be a great running back in the NFL, but he could hit, a good athletic guy. So I gave them a B. I'm kind of, it could be better, it could be worse. I don't know. I kind of just settled on a B because I didn't hate their draft by any means, but there were some things they did that kind of was curious, but then you think, well, this is organizational philosophy, and they stuck to it.
I gave him a B-, but I also think that there's a little bit of acknowledgement here. Look at how different this draft looks because of the ascension of Jordan Love. Where the Packers are, and later I'm sure we will do the mounting this all together to figure out where teams are headed into the offseason. I gave it a B-. Last up in this division, the Minnesota Vikings, who everybody thought was going to have to give up as many as 3 first-round picks to move up to number 4 overall if they wanted J.J. McCarthy. Instead, they gave up basically a package of half-eaten Skittles, and they're able to move up 1 pick where they take J.J. McCarthy instead at 10. And then they hang out. They get Dallas Turner and at 17. Had to do a little work there, but Dallas Turner, according to most, the cleanest edge rushing prospect that we see in the draft. So their first round was a home run in my mind, but they didn't have another pick till round 4. So how does that sort of approach your grade for the Vikings?
Yeah, I look at it a little differently in that, they got 2 guys in the top 17, and that should be a home run, right? But I don't like viewing it as just a quantity thing. How did you get those picks? How did you come to get them? They gave up a lot to get Dallas Turner, and that really affects their grade for me. They gave up, somebody had it on X, formerly Twitter today. Basically, it amounts to 6 picks they gave up because obviously they traded for the first-round pick with the Texans, moved up from that first-round pick to 17 to get Dallas Turner, who I don't love as a I don't think he's Myles Garrett. And if you're giving up 6 picks to go up and get him, I think that's a lot. I think that's too much. JJ McCarthy, fine. I like the move up from 11 to 10. Just get your guy. Great, cool. You didn't blow out the budget by going up to get JJ McCarthy at 4, like you said. Like, it was, you just stick to where you are. He kind of fell to you. Make a small move up to get your guy. They needed a quarterback, obviously. I think Kevin O'Connell's going to do good stuff with him. I think Dallas Turner's going to be a good player. But I can't sit here and give them a great grade because of all they gave up. So I gave them a B-. I just, again, the draft capital, look, they had 2 top 17 picks. Everybody's going to give them a good grade. How did you get those 2 top 17 picks? Well, you gave up a lot of capital for that. For a team like the Vikings, that's not a philosophy I love. So I give them a B-. And I could have even gone in the C+ type of range because I just don't love how they came to these 2 top 17 picks.
Well, and I gave them a C. And that C is because I just don't know what to expect out of JJ, right?
That's fair.
If JJ McCarthy turns out to be what the Vikings obviously think he's going to be, then it's a home run and nobody cares about anybody else picked in this draft. If JJ McCarthy is mediocre or bad, then this whole draft is going to be viewed as a disaster. And you are right about one important thing with Dallas Turner. If anybody, I mean anybody in the NFL believed he was Myles Garrett, ain't no way that the best edge rusher in this year's draft makes it to 17. Edge rushers make too much money. Somebody trades up somewhere to grab him. So I think there are little
or even Will
question
Anderson
marks.
for that matter, Fitz. Like, I mean, if he was considered a Will Anderson type, his teammate, like, he would have gone in top 5, and he didn't. And yet the Minnesota Vikings it's almost like they just got like, oh, we got this extra first round pick. We got to do something with it. You're kind of impulsive, move up. I just didn't love that move.
So for me, best draft in the North was the Bears because I think they got an epic quarterback, an epic wide receiver. They got an offensive lineman that can't start. The Lions really, really close any other time, but when you get an epic quarterback, it vaults you. So for me, the best is the Bears, and I'm really torn between the worst. I think it's almost a tie between the Packers and the Vikings. I'm going to have to lean Packers for me as the least impressive, but I can be talked into Vikings. What about you?
That's fair. I think Bears easy winner here in the North. They're going to be a playoff contender this year. Get ready for that. This is going to be a really, really fun team. They were better in the second half of last season than you remember. The Bears are going to be really good. The worst draft, I got to go Vikings. Although this could totally turn out to be one of the best. This is why we do this exercise. Like I talked about, snapshot of right now doesn't mean this is going to be the final answer 5 years from now. This could be one of the best drafts in the division if McCarthy and Turner work out. As obviously they think they can. You don't move up to draft Dallas Turner like that unless you really, really sold on him as a player. So we'll see how these guys develop. But right now, the Vikings have the worst draft in the division.
Look, I'm not going to apologize for nuance in this conversation, by the way. Like, one thing that Adam Gorney said on our set as JJ McCarthy was drafted was like, this is at the same time the safest and the riskiest pick all at once. Safe because it's quarterback they like, but risky. And I looked at some of the comments of people just eviscerating him on social media. It's like, what does this comment even mean? Like, y'all, there's nuance to this entire process. And I'm going to keep stressing that because, like, we're going to get murdered for these draft grades. At least acknowledge the fact that we're acknowledging nuance. All right, let's move to the NFC South next in this conversation. And we start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in our NFC South. They get Graham Barton, a center I love in the first round out of Duke. Chris Braswell in the second round, an edge rusher that's had some flashes, had some moments. Tyke Smith in Georgia, safety. A lot of people like Jalen McMillan, a wide receiver out of Washington that fans loved, by the way. Anytime a wide receiver was picked, it got all fire emojis. I really like the Bucky Irving pick, Oregon running back in the 4th round. Like, to me, this was sort of a B draft, Frank. Like, there's a lot here that I think, wow, Graham could turn out, like, taking a center in the first round used to be questionable, not anymore. So, like, I look at a lot of this and say, man, they got guys that in the next couple of years could all turn into somewhat of an important part of the team.
I like it. Solid B. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Barton, great value pick. Really, he's going to be a good player for them. No doubt about it. I didn't think Braswell was that far behind Dallas Turner, to be honest with you. So I think getting him in the second round, a good value pick there. I like the McMillan pick on the 3rd day. Just good, solid. Jason Licht does a great job with the draft. He did again. Solid B. I think the Buccaneers did a fine job in this draft to kind of just build up. Best player available. Whatever fell to them is very solid performance.
Which then brings us alphabetically by nickname to the Atlanta Falcons. I think Atlanta may have given us the most shocking pick I've ever seen in my 7 years covering the draft. I think they may have given us the most questionable draft strategy I have seen in the last 7 years covering the draft. I can't hammer this enough right now today with the information we know with a big enough F. And the reason, and that's rare for me. Like that is rare for me to fail a team on the draft. But the reason that I failed the Falcons isn't because of these picks. Remember, I wanted Michael Penix Jr. to be the quarterback of the Raiders. Like, I believe in Michael Penix Jr. I do not believe that the Falcons strategy plays to where the Falcons are today. They are in, when you pay Kirk Cousins, who's not a spring chicken, coming off an Achilles, when you pay Kirk, you're in win now mode, right? Like, and these picks, none of these picks reflect win now. These are developmental players that all have questions about certain things, and a quarterback that by the time he sees the field might be 27 years old, like, which is far different than Jordan Love. And I will remind everybody, sit next to Damian Harris. The first thing Dame said on our draft show was, you have just destroyed the locker room. Because now every kid in that locker room, every man in that locker room looks around and says, if you'll do that to our $100 million quarterback, you'll do that to me too, which screams to loyalty. You've also created a situation where a young locker room is going to have to decide, are they more Penix or are they more Kirk Cousins? A city of fans culturally is going to have to decide, are they more Penix or are they more Kirk Cousins? I think we all know the answer to that, right? Like, I think the Michael Penix Jr. pick at 8, I have no problem with. The Michael Penix Jr. pick to the Atlanta Falcons after paying Kirk Cousins without informing Kirk Cousins from day one of what you're doing splits this locker room in a way that absolutely gets this an F.
I give the Falcons a D because let me put it to you this way. I like the idea of being a little creative at quarterback. This is by far the most valuable position in the NFL, most valuable position in all sports, we could argue. So thinking outside the box to me is not that bad of an idea. You say, this position is so important. Why don't you double up? Why don't you build for the future while building for the present? There's a reason Kirk Cousins got $180 million. It's because quarterback is so valuable. But we talked about nuance, and there's so much nuance to this particular pick. Like you said, Michael Penix is not a young guy. He could be 27, as you said, before he even starts a game for the Falcons. Organizationally, it doesn't make sense to give Kirk Cousins $180 million and then go draft a quarterback number 8. You knew Michael Penix was going to be there at number 8. Like, you knew that. Like, everybody in the world knew Michael Penix Jr. was going to be available at number 8. Aren't you thinking ahead on this? Did it really take you that long into your entire offseason process to figure out, oh, yeah, we really, really like Michael Penix? I don't give them an F because I like Michael Penix as a player, but it just, everything else about the pick, even the fact that
let me say something to that real quick. You mentioned they knew Penix was going to be there at 8. I want to double down on that. They knew every pick that was going to go before Penix. If you, like, every team runs simulations and they run thousands of them on a computer to figure out who's going to be available. When you think of the 7 players selected before Michael Penix Jr., any simulation in the world would have given you some version of that. It was not shocking for Marvin Harrison Jr. to go at 4. It was not shocking for Malik Neighbors to go at 5 and already be off of this, or Joe Alt to go at 5, I should say. Right. Malik Neighbors at 6. It was not shocking for J.C. Latham to go at 7. None of that was unpredictable. So they ended up with one of the most predictable outcomes when they got to 8, which speaks to the fact that they should have known weeks ago that this was a possibility. And if that is a possibility, then inform your people so that nobody is shocked and you can handle it behind the scenes the right way.
And now they might have been worried about Kirk Cousins letting the cat out of the bag, and somebody like the Raiders moves up to 7 because they know, oh, he ain't getting past 8. So I kind of get that, I guess. But yes, I agree that you should at least let your guy know. Don't blindside him with this. And a couple more things with this. This isn't an Aaron Rodgers situation. Everybody compares this to Aaron Rodgers. Oh, yeah. Aaron Rodgers could have been the number 1 pick in that draft. It fell to 24. The Packers looked around and said, we didn't plan on this. Wow, what we got to pick him. It's just too good a value right here. I don't think you could say that about Michael Penix. Even if I like him as a player, nobody in the world had him as the 8th best player in this draft. Like, nobody. Like, it was something that they knew when the draft started. We are picking Michael Penix number 8 for every reason you said. First 7 picks are very predictable. They knew they were reaching on Michael Penix. This wasn't an Aaron Rodgers situation where the Packers, Ted Thompson back then, said, we didn't expect this, but we got to do it. It's such a good value. So this is not a perfect comp. And also, one more thing I want to add. James Palmer, formerly NFL Network, really, really good reporter, said 3 teams, including your Raiders, were trying to trade up into the top 10 to get Michael Penix. So the Falcons theoretically could have traded down with somebody like the Raiders at 13 or the Seahawks at 16. Ended up getting Dallas Turner, a guy the Vikings love enough to trade basically 6 picks for. Fill your biggest need, which is edge rusher. Edge rusher has been their biggest need for 3-4 years now, at least. how much differently would we be talking about the Atlanta Falcons right now if they would have traded the 8th pick to move back to 13, let's say at the Raiders. Raiders draft Penix, whatever. At 13, the Falcons draft Dallas Turner and get extra picks for the future. We would have been like, this is an best draft of the division. Way to go. You're built to win now. You just got your edge rusher. They passed on. There's an opportunity cost with that they passed on. So everything about this specific pick of Penix at 8, I don't mind being out of the box at quarterback. Everything about this specific pick at Penix at 8 leads me to believe this was a mistake, and that's why I gave him a D.
Yeah, by the way, Palmer, you're right, does very good work reporting. I also think teams are full of it when it comes to post-draft and they're getting killed. I remember a few years ago when the Raiders stunningly drafted Mike Mitchell early in the draft. And Mike Mayock didn't even know who he was. Nobody had any B-roll on him. Nobody what to do. And then a day later, it was like, no, several teams were trying to trade up to get Mike Mitchell. No, they weren't. Like, who is really trying? You think all these teams were trying to trade up and they were going to trade up into Atlanta's spot? That only makes the pick look worse. Were they trying to trade up with the Titans or with the Chargers and you think they turned down those trade ups? Like, none of that makes sense. If you follow the logic of where that leak comes from the Falcons trying to justify a bad pick.
Sure, that could be.
I think it's an F. All right. So, and by the way, by far to me, the worst draft in this year's draft in the NFL. Carolina is next up. And Carolina takes Xavier Legette. We learned it was Legette by day 2 of the draft.
Legette. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
No idea. I've for years, I've read his highlights in South Carolina, and it's always been Legette. But Legette, he informs us it is an introductory press conference. So Legette, they get Jonathan Brooks, arguably the best running back in this class. They get Trayvon Wallace, the Kentucky linebacker in the 3rd round, one of the best linebackers in this year's draft. Like, quietly, I think this felt like a B draft for Carolina. Is Carolina still just a bad football team? Yes. Is their owner just an absolute piece of Yes. But is the organization in a better situation today than they were pre-draft? Yes.
I gave it a B- for the Panthers. I'm not really sold on Legette as a guy in the 1st round. Really 1 year in his college career. Great year. And he shows a lot on tape, but the lack of consistent production just makes me a little weary about that. I think a 2nd round pick on a running back coming off an ACL for a team that won 2 games last year, I don't love that either, but I get it. He helps Bryce Young out, takes a little bit of pressure off of him. Jatavian Sanders is a guy I really did like, the tight end. I thought that was a good value pick. It wasn't bad. There's nothing bad about this Panthers draft. It's just some of the specific player fits I didn't love. That's why I gave it a B-. Like, as dumb as it sounds, if the Cowboys draft Brooks at 46, I would have been over the moon over that. That's a perfect pick. You traded up. You drafted Jonathan Brooks. You take the chance on him being healthy with the ACL. The Panthers made the exact same move, and I'm like, I don't love that. And I think everybody can understand the nuance there. That's why I gave the Panthers a B-, just because some of their picks I just didn't love for the spots that they took them in, but not bad. And they helped, they have to build up around Bryce Young. They did him so wrong last year by putting that crew out on offense around him, by helping him with 3 of their first 4 picks in this draft. That is noteworthy, but still, I just ultimately give them a B-.
Sneaky good draft to me for New Orleans. I give them a B. In the 1st round, they take Talise Fuanga. By the way, if you watch the NFL Network, he did tell everybody there it is Fuanga, like to a tongue.
You are really giving me a lot of pronunciation. I spent a lot of time looking up pronunciations, and I should have just called you.
No, I thought it was Fuaga, and then that's how I've been talking to him the whole time. But then the NFL Network, one of the commentators said Fuanga in an interview, and his face lit up. He was so excited, and he's like, "Yes, finally, somebody gets it right. The N is there." Polynesian pronunciation. Talise Fuanga. A mauler on the offensive line, a guy that, frankly, I coveted for my favorite team. Just an absolute, I think he's a great pick for them on the offensive line. Kool-Aid McKinstry, somebody that injury issues are why he was even still there in the 2nd round. If his foot is fine, also some concussion stuff. I think that pick makes a ton of sense. And Spencer Rattler, not for nothing in the 5th round, like you're getting a guy that has all the tools. So now he sits behind Derek Carr. You're invested in Derek Carr. So let's see if over a little bit of time, Rattler can actually develop. I like this. It felt like a B draft to me. Felt like a good one.
I gave the Saints a C-, honestly. I didn't love their draft. Fuanga is a good, solid player, and he fills a need for them. I like that pick. But after that, didn't really love anything else. Kool-Aid McKinstry, there's questions about his ceiling as a player, questions about his health. He's kind of redundant with Lattimore. What are you going to trade him now? Like that doesn't really vibe with me. So I didn't love that pick, but it would have been fine if you don't go from 41 to 150 in the draft without a pick. Now you get the 150 and draft Spencer Rattler, And there's a quarterback desperate league. There's a reason he's around in the 5th round, right? Like, I get it. They're the tools. And we think back to that freshman year when he was a breakout guy. He really didn't do much after that. Don't hate the pick necessarily, but when that's your 3rd pick of the draft, I just didn't love this class. I give it a C-. Although Fuanga is going to be a good player for them. I don't think there's much question about that. That was a good pick. I just have questions about the rest of their draft.
I am curious why I went, when you made your grade. I don't know why that was the appropriate physical reaction. So we agree the Falcons are the worst. Is that like, who was the best in this division? Like, was that the Bucs?
Yeah, I think it's to me, it's the Bucs. I just think they had a good, solid draft. Like I don't really have many questions about what they did or how they got there. They just kind of played the draft like they usually do, got good, solid quality. I think the Bucs is the best, and the Falcons had to be the worst.
Yeah, the draft grades on this division are much like the division going into the season, kind of meh. The NFC West up next, and we start with the 49ers in their draft. Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver, goes first. I don't know, man. I was sitting next to Harmon, who Matt Harmon does great wide receiver breakdowns, talking to a lot of guys, and everybody was kind of like, of all of the first wide receivers for them to take, there were other wide receivers that people liked better for what that's worth. Renardo Green, the corner, is in the 2nd round. Also had some people go, Dominic Pooney is an offensive lineman I really like. Malik Mustafa, a player, safety I really like. Yeah. So there was some good value here, but it feels kind of like a B, maybe a B- to me, of like I'm not really sure.
And that's why I gave them a C. I gave the 49ers a C because you're not really sure about any of this. Ricky Pearsall, I do like. I think that's going to be a good fit. Matt Harmon really liked him. He turned me on to him. But I think Matt was talking more about him as a middle round guy, 2nd round guy, even later, getting value there and not necessarily, hey, this guy showed up in the 1st round. But I assume Kyle Shanahan will make it work with Ricky Pearsall. He'll be a very, very good player. But part of it, too, is it's kind of an admission. We're not going to have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk after this year. One of them is probably gone, maybe before the season even. Both of those guys have been involved in a lot of trade rumors. So that, it kind of, you traded Ricky Pearsall for maybe Deebo Samuel for 2025. Do I love that? No, not really. Some of the guys you mentioned, especially Mustafa, I thought were fine. Good picks. Pooney there is fine on the offensive line. This team didn't have a lot of needs. They could just go and say, we're just going to draft who we want, draft guys for the future. Is obviously a Super Bowl contender. Didn't need a lot, but the overall their grade was just their draft was just fine. That's why I gave them a C. Not really excited about anything. Not really against anything. I do think Pearsall is going to be a good player eventually, but for all the reasons I mentioned, just kind of fine for the 49ers. Gave them a C. It's something to get really excited about it.
Where are you on the Cardinals? Marvin Harrison Jr., arguably the best player in this year's draft. Darius Robinson late in the 1st round, the edge rusher. At the time, probably the best of the edge rushers left on the board. Max Melton, a corner at Rutgers that I think has some developing to do, but good. And then they went off in the 3rd round. They had 4 picks in the 3rd round. So we'll see if any of those guys end up developing into them. A lot of picks. So where's your grade fall out for the Cardinals?
I should have given them the Cardinals a higher grade. I gave them a B. Because I don't like grading on quantity. Like, you got these picks for a reason. You traded other assets. It's not just like you woke up with 7 picks. You had to get there for a reason. But I thought these are 7 picks just fine. Of course, let's start with Marvin Harrison Jr. I've called gold jacket talent. He's the kind of prospect you dream about. I thought he was the best player in this draft, regardless of position. I applaud the Cardinals for all the talk about trading down and this and that. They just stuck there and said, no, we're not passing this guy. That's what I've been talking about for weeks. Just take Marvin Harrison. Don't overthink it. Thought some of their other picks were just fine. Like, I thought that Robinson was a good pick late in the 1st round. But again, you got that 1st round pick some other way. This wasn't exactly, it's not just handed to you. It's not a gift. So yeah, the cost involved in all this is there. But I thought Max Melton was fine. Benson, I mean, you're going to have to replace James Conner eventually. He was a fine pick. Some people had him as the best running back in the draft. 7 picks in the top 90. You help your team right away. I give it a B. I thought they did just fine with the picks they had, which were plentiful.
Yeah, I think B is the right letter grade for that, given the players they got. And look, if Marvin Harrison Jr. turns out to be just half as good as we think he's going to be, it'll end up being an A draft in the end. The Rams, Jared Verse in the 1st round, then Brandon Fisk in the 2nd round. And if you haven't seen the on the call video or whatever they call that now, where Fisk is getting the call and then just starts weeping when he starts talking to Jared Verse, like, look, and then Blake Corum in the 3rd round. I thought that was good value. Cameron Kinchins, the safety out of Miami. I think what they told you in the first 3 rounds is that no Aaron Donald means a rebuild of the defense, right? And you're not going to have the same looks with no Aaron Donald. I thought this was a really good, sort of a B-plus draft to me for the Rams going out, getting good value, but also getting good players that are going to make an immediate impact. All four of their picks from the first 3 rounds have a chance to be impact players year one.
They could be. I gave them a C+. I gave the Rams a C+ for now. Because I mean, could improve over time. I did like Jared Verse. I thought that was a good, solid pick, but I also don't view him as some elite pass rusher. He's not going to be a TJ Watt type of guy. I don't think. We'll see as time goes on. The Fisk pick to me, again, I always thinking about the cost. They gave up a second next year to move up in a defensive tackle heavy second round. Is Fisk, who's a really, really athletic dude, is he that much better than the rest of the defensive tackles that would have been there for the Rams later in the second round? I say no. I don't like the draft capital they gave up. This was just the Rams and F them picks, right? Like they're just like, we want them. We're going to go get them. We don't care about the cost. Well, I care about the cost. I didn't like that. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the Corum pick at all. I think to draft a running back there, an undersized running back there who doesn't have a high ceiling, who has a lot of miles on him already from Michigan, and you already had Kyron Williams. Like, you already have a bell cow running back who shocked the league last year at how good he was and how durable he was. I think Corum was just, especially for the third round, if you get him later, a 5th round maybe, yeah, I'd be standing on a table for it. He wasn't going to last that long. We know that. But for the Rams, for this particular fit with the third round, I don't love it. I really don't. I just don't see him as a top 10 running back in this league. And third round is expensive for a running back these days. So I didn't love that pick. That's why I gave them a C+, just because of, again, the cost opportunity here just didn't fit well for me with the Rams. It's solid. They built up their defensive line. I think they took 4 defensive linemen. We all understand why. Their defensive line is going to be pretty good next year if you look at their depth chart. But overall, C+ for the Rams. Well, admitting if I'm wrong on Corum, if I'm wrong on Fisk, this draft grade could go up in a big time way.
Look, I don't think Corum is necessarily a world beater, but I don't think he has to be there. Like, he just becomes part of the running back rotation. It's part of the rotation.
You can't draft part of a running back rotation in the third round. I don't love that. I still, the Rams really played well last year and they overachieved, but I think even Rams fans would admit there are some holes in this roster still. It's not a really, really deep roster. So when you talk about, and I agree with you, a good part of a committee, a rotation with Kyron Williams, third round, like, no, 6th round, sure. If third round, no, I don't love that cost.
Well, this is like one of our first big disagreements in a grade.
We're not friends anymore. I don't.
That happened quickly.
I think our friendship just ended over Blake Corum.
Let's see if we can have makeup grades now. I kept that clean. With Seattle next up in our analysis here. Byron Murphy, arguably to most, I don't think arguably to most, the best defensive tackle on the board in a world where defensive tackles have gotten paid. I expected Byron Murphy would go in the first 15 or so. He goes at 16. Christian Haynes, the guard out of Connecticut, small school, but man, big potential there. And then some names people recognize, like Nehemiah Pritchett, the corner out of Auburn in the 5th round, Laumia out of Utah, another offensive lineman in the 6th round. Like, I think this was a pretty good draft. This felt like a B draft to me for Seattle.
That's fine. I give him a C. It just didn't blow me away.
You are top on the NFC West, good sir.
I am. See, I told you I'm not just an A grader over here. We just started with the NFC East.
Who hurt you?
I gave the Seahawks a C. I'd really like the Byron Murphy pick. I think he's a disruptor in the middle, fit a need for them. But after that, like, what's there to be excited about? They didn't have a 2nd round pick. Haynes is a fine pick where they took him. Look, I'll say this about the Seahawks. They're very unconventional. A lot of their picks, especially in the late rounds, work out a lot better than I think. This grade could move up as well. But right now, just like a C. It's fine. It's average. Murphy was good. I don't know if he's Warren Sapp necessarily, but he's a good pick for them. But what after that do I get excited about? Nothing right now, maybe in the future, but that's why I gave the Seahawks a C.
So best and worst of the NFC West would be for you?
I think the best has to be the Cardinals, just volume-wise, right? Like, I mean, they drafted, again, 7 players in the top 90. That helps them immediately and got the best player out of this, especially this division, maybe this entire draft, in Marvin Harrison. I give probably the 49ers the worst grade, right? Like, this was just not an impressive draft for them. I understand what the other teams were doing, at least. The 49ers were like, I don't know. The 49ers to me are the worst, but the Cardinals almost have to be the best.
I'll give you the 49ers is the worst. I think we agree on that. I'll continue to just hammer home that I think the Rams had the best in the division. Okay. I think this is our big first big disagreement. Mommy and Daddy are fighting, and I'm not sure if we'll ever break up. Ever make up. It reminds me of my childhood. All right, we're going to continue to fight for a minute When we come back, though, we will finally get to the best conference in all the land, known as the AFC. We're doing that next. All right, we made up. There was no hugging because we're on Zoom, but we made up, and we're back to getting along as we continue.
Still going to hang out in Nashville this summer.
Well, I mean, I don't.
Already,
let's not be too aggressive with that. Like I'll text you some places to go. That's the best. I'm not going to commit to anything, Frank. My God. All right, let's grade the AFC. We start with the AFC East because apparently we just like to torture me and make the best division go last. The AFC East. We will start with the Buffalo Bills as we are grading every single draft so far through this. So Buffalo, an interesting one because they trade down a couple of times, including a controversial trade with the Chiefs that helped the Chiefs get exactly what they want. But in the process of trading down, they get Keon Coleman, the wide receiver out of Florida State, who for a wide receiver in this year's draft did not run particularly well at the combine, but has had some good tape. They get Cole Bishop, a Utah safety, a really good player there. Dwayne Carter out of Duke in the third round, and then sweet baby Ray Davis out of Kentucky. That's my nickname for him. He can choose to take it. Should have gotten that NIL deal. Felt like a pretty good, this is funny to me. If you look at ESPN.com, and you look at what they identified as the team needs coming into this year's draft for Buffalo. Wide receiver, corner, safety, edge, and center. All of them are now green dotted because they got all of those in this year's draft. So I think this was a pretty solid draft for Buffalo. B. I'll give it a B. I didn't give it a letter grade. My bad.
I gave the Bills a C. Wasn't as high in it because I'll tell you why. I just don't love Keon Coleman. I just think when you are a 4-6 type receiver who's not great at getting any separation, it makes everything else have to be perfect. You could live that way. Des Bryant wasn't a great separator, but he was one of the best contested catch guys we've ever seen. Maybe Michael Irvin falls in that bucket too. You can make it work. And Keon Coleman was a very good college receiver, but I just don't love him out of all the receivers that went around there. And I didn't really like the Bills' moves back. I thought they should have been moving up, but they moved back. They moved back from 28 to 32. Everybody's banging on them. How can you help the Chiefs? I think Bill Belichick had a really good clip when he was talking about it of don't worry about the other team. That's not how NFL teams operate. Do what's best for you. So I didn't hate the move back from 28 to 32. From 32 to 33 baffled me. You got nothing in return. You got a late round pick swap with the Panthers, 6-5, I believe it was. You gave up the 5th round option on Keon Coleman. What if he is a stud? What if he is Des Bryant? All of a sudden, you've given up cost control in the 5th round, and for what? To move up from the 6th round to the 5th? Like that? That's basically nothing. That's
a really good point, buddy. That is a really good. I hadn't even thought of that.
Right, and I just didn't like that. And maybe they did like Leggett. We'll never know because no team is honest after the draft. But they watched a lot of receivers go until they took Keon Coleman. Maybe he was their target all along. Maybe he's really going to work out well working with a great quarterback. The reason I didn't fail them or anything, I'm sitting there banging on them, is because I like a lot of the players they got after Keon Coleman. And even Keon Coleman could work out really well. But I thought they should have been multiple at receiver. This is the type of team that should have had 3 receivers come off the board. They had 9 more picks and didn't draft another receiver. I thought they should have packaged some of those 9 picks, move up to get another receiver. They should have been a little more aggressive here. But the players they did draft are good. I get it. You get cornerback help, you get linebacker help, you get some offensive line help. The Bills suddenly they're a pretty thin roster. We think about the Bills as a Super Bowl contender, and they are, but they also at the back end of the roster had a lot of needs. They did fill those needs, but just the way they went about the draft, I gave them a C. I would like to see a lot more receiver help here. It's a better grade if Keon Coleman is the stud they think he is, but for right now, just middle of the road for me with the Bills.
You have talked me into downgrading them to a B- with that 5th-year option. That was a good point by you. I've scratched out the grade. I've changed it on the report card. I will say, Damian Harris on our draft show pointed out, even in our prep process, having just come out of that locker room, that the Bills internally believe in their wide receivers. But even more importantly, I thought this was interesting. They look at the net number of touchdowns they think Josh Allen can account for, 40 to 45 a year between passing, running. They think he can account for 40 to 45. They don't believe any one wide receiver will make a difference in that number. He will still account for 40 to 45.
How could you ask your quarterback to do that much every year in, year out? You're putting so much on his shoulders. Give him some help. And I don't think they did enough to get him help.
All right. So B- for me, C for Frank. Let's move to Minnesota. Good Lord. Let's move to Miami, where the Dolphins took Chop Robinson in the 1st round. Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle out of Houston in the 2nd round. Head scratcher Jalen Wright, running back in the 4th round. Fast dude, but I think there's some real questions there. The real questions part of this, Malik Washington, a name some people know, the wide receiver going in the 6th round. This, to me, did not feel spectacular. Nothing about this really blew my socks off. Chop Robinson was the best edge rusher on the board when they picked. Was he the best player available? I don't know. Like, is Chop really going to suddenly replace? Like, I understand they had some injury issues. They lost players on the defensive line. It was an area of significant need. I don't suddenly say, well, Chop solves that. Everything's groovy now. Like, it feels like a C draft to me. It was like just this. There was a lot of meh to be in this draft.
Yeah, I gave them Dolphins a B. A lot of it depends on Chop Robinson, who I don't love. He's an athletic guy, but not very productive. And sometimes that works out. Ziggy Ansah wasn't a very productive player in college at BYU, but he ended up being a really, really good pro for a few years before injuries got him like they do most guys. It's a rare time when I give a decent grade to a team who I don't love their first round pick because I like they did everything they did after. Patrick Paul, I think, was a really, really good pick for them. I know everybody's banging on a Jalen Wright pick, but they value the running game and running backs. And Raheem Mostert's getting up there in age. He's not going to be there forever. We know Achane, he's not the most durable guy in the world. So I think he fits what they want to do. And he was kind of a size speed freak coming out of Tennessee. I think he'd be really, really productive in that offense. Kamara, the defensive lineman out of Colorado State, I really liked him in the middle rounds. Everybody likes the Malik Washington pick, including me. I like what the Dolphins did after the first round. That's why I gave them a B. And Chop Robinson could work out very, very well. I just don't love guys with that profile. We'll see. But for right now, Dolphins get a B. I like what they did after the first round.
All right. So the Jets, for all the conversation about would they take a weapon, they did the smart thing in the first round, taking Olu Fashanu, who could have on some boards gone much higher, I believe, out of Penn State. A lot of potential for Olu. He's got to live up to that potential at some point, but that pick made so much sense for me. I loved it. Malachi Corley, the wide receiver out of Western Kentucky, at the top of the third round is let's see. Like, to me, that's the ultimate roll of the dice because that Western Kentucky offense is so like run and gun. It'll be interesting to see what he looks like. Braylon Allen, the running back out of Wisconsin, who's younger than anybody thinks, coming in the fourth round was also interesting. And then Jordan Travis, a bit of a developmental pick there from the quarterback at Florida State, who we all know was obviously a big part of why they were so good until the injury late in the season. So I thought there was a lot of good here. Like, I gave this draft, like, you could talk me into a B+, but I'm a solid B with it.
I give the Jets a B-. And a big part of this is my love for Brock Bowers. I think Bowers is the best college tight end I've ever seen, as we've talked about on the show before. I would have loved to have seen him with Aaron Rodgers. Look, I get picking Fashanu. He's a very, very good left tackle. When he came back to Penn State, everybody was shocked because they're like, wow, this guy could have been a top 5 pick. He still has that talent for sure. But it kind of makes the signing of Tyron Smith redundant. Like, I get it. Tyron Smith is going to miss games. He's old. Then why sign him in the first place? I get you don't know the Fashanu is going to fall to you. I still wanted to see them get Bowers. I thought he really, really would have rounded this offense out so well. I get the Fashanu pick. I'm probably being a little harsh on it just because I love Brock Bowers so much. After that, Corley I thought was a good dart throw. Obviously, I know Braylon Allen well, being a Wisconsin guy. He was awesome as a freshman and kind of just tapered off after that. Maybe that was Luke Fickell's offenses last year when Wisconsin absolutely lost its identity as a program, but that's a different show. I thought Jordan Travis, maybe I'm just buying into the story here, but I like the pick. He's so easy to root for. All the intangibles in the world, obviously, that horrible leg injury that derailed his season, Florida State season late. You're rooting for that guy. Ultimately, though, I give him a B-. And most of that is because I think they're going to watch Brock Bowers become a superstar elsewhere. And even if Fashanu's a really, really good left tackle, I think they're just going to regret passing on Bowers. I'll be honest.
New England, for me, had the best draft in their division. Hard not to give them an A because I think they got an underrated quarterback in Drake May, and I do mean underrated. Jalen Polk, and I think an underrated wide receiver in the second round. They get Wallace, they get Robinson. They got guys that can come in and immediately compete to play on the offensive line. Like, I thought this was a really solid draft by the Patriots. I give it an A.
I gave it an A-. I mean, yes, I could have given it an A. I thought May at number 3 was really, really smart. Don't trade down if you're the Patriots. You need a quarterback. Look, it's hard to win in the NFL without a quarterback, and you got a guy who fell in your lap who it's telling that multiple teams were offering a ton to move up to draft Drake May. The light bulb should turn on at that point and say, well, this kid might be really good. They knew that, obviously. They picked him. I thought that was really, really smart. Get your quarterback, build around him. Jalen Polk helps that. A lot of people like Polk coming out of Washington. Hard to not like him. Look, we knew exactly what the Patriots' plan was looking at their draft. 7 of their 8 picks went on the offensive side. They know our offense stinks. We got to fix that. I thought they did. I give the Patriots an A-. Really, really solid draft. Did what they needed to do. And not trading out of that 3 spot, I think, is going to be something that they're really going to be happy about for the next decade.
I think the Patriots are the best in the division, the worst in the division. It's kind of a toss-up for a lot of these different teams. I could go Dolphins as the worst in the division. I think that's where I'll go, but it's pretty close. They're all pretty tight for me.
Yeah, I obviously Patriots best draft in the division. I went with the Bills as my worst just because, again, I don't know that they solved receiver, and I don't like this philosophy of, well, we got Superman at quarterback, and he doesn't need any help. Life is easier when you get help, even for Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, help out Josh Allen. That's why I gave the Bills a C. But again, if Keon Coleman becomes a superstar receiver, and a lot of people think he can, then his draft grade looks a lot better for the Bills.
All right, so we move to the AFC North with the Cincinnati Bengals took Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia at 18. Let's see on that one. Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle, goes in the second round. I really like that one. Jermaine Burton, the wide receiver out of Alabama, needs a little bit of work. This was an okay draft. It felt like a B- draft to me for Cincinnati. Where are you on it?
I gave the Bengals a B. The Mims pick is it kind of turns this whole draft, right? Like he's a guy didn't play much at Georgia, but when he did play, he looked really good. Obviously, a size athletic freak coming out. He's got the goods. It's just, can he stay healthy? Can he develop as a player without much college experience? That's the big question. But I think as a player, I like Mims a lot. And if he comes through, great pick for the Bengals. We'll see on that. I like the fact that they attacked the defensive line, which was such a liability at the end of last year. I think that some of their picks there were really good. I like the McKinley Jackson pick, Chris Jenkins pick. Both of those really fit a need. And to me, the Burton pick was, we're going to look back in a few years, and the Jermaine Burton pick for the Bengals is going to be one of those picks where we're saying, how did he go in the third? I just really like this fit. I think that, obviously T. Higgins probably going to be moving on sooner than later.
Yeah,
I think that he fits that role really, really well. I think he's going to blossom in that offense. I love that pick. That was one of my favorite picks of the draft after the first round. I just went, whoa, that is a great, great fit. Probably some of the reason I'm giving the Bengals a B here, but I did like their draft. I thought overall the Bengals attacked their weaknesses and did a pretty good job.
The Browns didn't have a first-round pick. In fact, didn't pick until the second round, 22nd pick, where they take Michael Hall Jr., defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Felt like a really strong pick to me. Zach Zinner, the guard, goes in the third round. Jamari Thrash, a wide receiver people love out of Louisville, goes in the fifth round. Like, they didn't have a lot of assets here, but I thought they did a pretty good job with what they had. So it feels like a B- to me.
Yeah, I ended up giving them a C- just because, again, you didn't have the volume here if you're the Browns, because we know why. The Deshaun Watson trade keeps coming back to haunt them. They'd take that one back in a second. But I thought they did well with the picks they had. That's why it's not a D or an F or anything like that. Like you said, the Hall pick is totally fine. I think that works out for them. Somebody like Thrash could hit. They took a lot of guys with their picks who you're like, well, okay, that's good value, and that could really work out. And I think that saved their grade a little bit here. Volume wasn't helping the Browns here because of the Deshaun Watson trade. But I ultimately gave them a C- just because they did well with the picks they did have.
Baltimore crushed it. They always do. They get an A from me. Nate Wiggins at 30. Sure, I know there's some issues there. There's some questions there, but they're going to get the best out of him. Roger Rosengarten, the offensive lineman in the second round. Brilliant pick. When Adisa Isaac went off the board, we all looked at each other on our broadcast and said, how the hell is Adisa Isaac still sitting here? TJ Tampa in the fourth round, somebody that could come in. Like, all Baltimore does is just sit their best player available their way to a really good draft. I thought this was an A for me.
Yeah, I probably could be convinced. I gave them B+, just because I'm not the biggest Wiggins fan in the world. He is a very slim guy, but you got to trust the Ravens when it comes to evaluating players of any position, especially cornerback. They've had a lot of home runs there. TJ Tampa was a great value pick. I can say that about so many of the Ravens picks. Good value pick, because that's what they do. They sit back. They wait to get the top guy on their board every year, and it works out so well for them. And then they develop these guys too. So I gave the Ravens a B+. I'm probably a little low. Could have given them an A-. It was a really solid Ravens draft. If I was to just tell you the Ravens had a Ravens draft, you'd nod your head without even knowing the players and say, yeah, they just got a bunch of guys who slipped for some reason and took incredible value at just about every pick. That's what the Ravens do.
Now, I said that the Ravens had the best pick in the draft, or best picks in the division, I should say. I think it might be a tie because the Steelers did Steeler things. Troy Fautanu, the offensive lineman from Washington, Zach Frazier, center from West Virginia, Roman Wilson, a value in the third out of Michigan, Peyton Wilson in the fourth round. Like, did you go up and down the list? They got difference makers in the first four rounds. They got guys that all make an impact in my mind. So I think that's a pretty amazing job in the draft too. So I'll give them also an A.
I'll be honest, I give the Steelers a B plus, and I think I'm so low on this. You look at the consensus grades, which are compiled. The Steelers got the top grade of all the people who do the exercise we're doing with the draft grades. I was shocked by that. I thought they had a good draft coming out of it. Everybody thinks they had a great draft, and that might be true. Fatuanu is obviously going to be an impact guy for them. They've needed to rebuild a line for so long. They really helped that with him and Frazier. Wilson, you got to kind of trust the Steelers, I guess, with their mid-round receiver picks. I thought he should be good. Peyton Wilson's another guy. Yeah, he should be a good pick. If he stays healthy, guys who are constantly injured in college usually get healthy in the NFL. He reminds me kind of like Alex Anzalone, who is a very, very good player when he's healthy, but he can't stay healthy. And that could be Peyton Wilson's problem. I hope not. I hope that guy plays 17 games a year until Roger Goodell makes it 18 games a year, and then he plays 18 games a year for the rest of his career. I just had a few more questions about the Steelers draft than everybody else did. That's why I gave them a B+. Obviously not a bad grade. They did well. I just didn't see this as, wow, this was the best draft of any team in the NFL. I thought they were good, solid, filled a lot of needs, but a few more questions than everybody else has on the Steelers.
I think the reason so many people are high on it is just because it feels Steeler-esque. They took offensive linemen and things like that.
Totally
so
fine. Yep.
I'll give the Ravens the best in the division and the Browns probably the worst just because there wasn't a lot there for them.
I'll give the Steelers the best draft in the division still, even though I didn't give them an A. I think they did fine. They picked a guy, like you said, a lot of Steelers guys, a lot of guys you could, oh yeah, that guy looked good in the black and gold. It'll be fine. Obviously, Browns have to be last because they just didn't have the capital because of the Watson trade, but did well at the picks they did. But yes, the Browns had the worst draft in this division.
So now we go to the AFC South, where the Indianapolis Colts took Latu in the first round. I should point out, some teams had him completely off their board, and it's important to point that out because the medical issue, there are teams that feel like he's one injury away from not playing. There are teams that feel like he's going to have to be load managed. There are teams that just were really hesitant about the fact that there was a medical retirement around the neck issue. So Latu to me is very hit or miss. Like we're going to have the context of the conversation when we figure out where he goes from there. But A.D. Mitchell in the second round, who fell, Gonclaves, the tackle in the third round, feels like he can be a big contributor. Bortolini out of Wisconsin, absolutely feels like he can be a contributor. Like, I think they got good pieces, but not knowing where we are truly on the medical for Latu is the reason I go sort of B-ish, B- on this.
And that's fair, but to me, the Colts get an A- because I like the fact that they took some chances. This has been a very safe team in free agency and the draft. They're very high on, we just want this certain type of character. A lot of guys off of their board. Free agency, they don't splash around too much. I tried to fit a line in, from rounders into my winners and losers column. If you're too safe all the time, your whole life becomes a grind. And I think that they got out of that box and took some chances. Latu is a chance. Like, there's no doubt there's a risk there. And to draft a guy 15th overall who's had a medical retirement in his past is not safe. But he's the one guy in this draft on the defensive side of the ball who could be a TJ Watt, who could be a Myles Garrett. Like, this guy is the goods. And I like the fact that they took a shot on him. And then I learned this, by the way, Fitz, Adonai Mitchell, that's how he pronounces it. Look, he's a boomer bust guy, but I like that. There's not many receivers in this class who are more talented. And for where they got him in the middle of the second round, and Ballard talking about like all the other off-field stuff is BS with him. He's just fine. We'll see, but I like the fact that they took a shot. If you think about Mitchell hitting his ceiling next to Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson, I just really like that pick. I like the fact that they took chances. I would have liked to have seen them take some more cornerback. I might have given them an A if they would have fixed the cornerback situation. They're very confident in their cornerback situation. I'm not. They feel like if these guys get healthy, they're going to be good. We'll see. But to me, the Colts are an A- because of the chances they took, because I thought they were very reasonable risks on very, very high ceiling players.
So Jacksonville gets a really good wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr., unexpectedly still there at 23 in the first round out of LSU. They also take Mason Smith, the defensive tackle, Jerry and Jones, Javon Foster, some names people might know, Javonte Prince, the Ole Miss corner they take. So it felt like they got some. I love Brian Thomas Jr., but the rest of it to me is all sort of like, okay. Like, we of our three emojis, it was like, maybe. This feels like a very maybe. It's like a C+ B- to me.
Yeah, I gave the Jaguars a C for that very reason. It's like, maybe. Like, there's a lot of things that could work out in their favor. I like the fact that they use a lot of later picks on the defensive side of the ball. They need to address that. They need to get better over there, especially on the line, and they did that. Brian Thomas is, to me, a very good receiver that needs refinement in his game. He almost seems like he already had Gabriel Davis. You just signed him, and you just signed maybe a better version of Gabriel Davis. But I think that he needs to become a better all-around receiver to be a true number one. But I like the talent, obviously. I don't hate the Jaguars draft. I just don't love it either. And I'm very much by the book with C is average, and I think this was an average draft. Maybe it's just because I'm down on the Jaguars as a whole, and it allowed me to not be as high on their draft class as I should have been. But to me, just an average draft, I gave the Jaguars a C.
So next up, we have Houston, who takes Kamari Lassiter, the corner out of Georgia, in the second round. Remember, Houston didn't have a first-round pick. So they take second round. They traded down a couple of times. A lot of movement there with the 10th overall pick. Blake Fisher, the offensive lineman, also in the second round out of Notre Dame. Caleb Bullock, the safety out of USC. Cade Stover, tight end out of Ohio State. Some names people might know there. Jordan, the running back out of Louisville, that's an absolute burner, right? So I thought this was a good draft. And also, frankly, you just mentioned what teams you're down on. Like, I think Houston last year sort of shut everybody up. And so they get a lot of benefit of the doubt for me at this point. Like, you have a draft like they had last year, I'm going to sit down, shut up color in my book, and I'm going to give you a B and say, I trust you, Houston.
Yeah, and that's fair. I gave the Texans a C- just because I look and I say, where's a pick you're just over the moon for? Where's a pick where you're like, wow, look, maybe some of these picks do work out. I think the Texans are proving themselves that they're on a different path now, and they're a lot sharper than they were 3-4 years ago as far as drafting especially. But I looked at Lassiter as kind of a little bit of a reach when a couple cornerbacks went ahead of them and they needed a corner. So let's just draft this guy. I'm not totally thrilled with the Fisher pick. He might turn out to be really, really good. But I think if you look at this draft, you just say, where's the highlight here? Where's the breakout guy? Where's the guy who I'm like, wow, that was a great value, like we do with the Ravens or the Steelers? And I didn't see that with the Texans. That's why I gave them a C-. It's hard when you don't have a first round pick. It's hard to jump off the page, right? And they didn't to me, but still C- could get better as some of these late round picks develop. But maybe I should have given them more of a benefit of the doubt. But I just didn't love this Texans draft, probably just because of the lack of a first round pick. But hey, they got something back for that first.
Titans last up in this division, J.C. Latham at 7, who Charles made very clear on our draft broadcast was their number one tackle on their board. Even if Joe Alt had been available, they wanted J.C. Latham. And when Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, is the person making that decision, and he's well respected, I have no choice but to sit back and say, okay, they saw something with J.C. Latham that a lot of people didn't see. T'Vondre Sweat in the second round, somebody that has had some weight management issues and somebody that also had a DUI in this process. So real questions. That's the reason he was even his play. There's no reason for him to be available 6th pick in the second round. He should have gone in the first round, but there are questions. So you look at those are the two big picks, and the Cedric Gray, the linebacker in the 4th round. Like, then we start to get 4th, 5th, 6th. I don't have a lot of questions here, but for me, this is a C draft because J.C. Latham is somebody that they respect. So I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt on that. But T'Vondre is somebody that's like ultimate boom or bust for me. And like, if somebody I've lived in Nashville for a long time. If you have weight management issues and a DUI, like, this is a temptation city. I'm just saying, you better be ready in Nashville to come in and clean it up, right? And that's asking a lot. I'm just saying, it's asking a lot to clean that up in Nashville.
Yeah, I gave the Titans a C as well. Part of my problem is J.C. Latham. They're expecting him to move the left tackle. He's never done that. Not in college, at least. He did in high school. That's a big ask for the number 7 pick of the draft. Like, he's a great athlete. He's a smart guy from all accounts. He's a good player. But it's still a lot to ask a right tackle, hey, go be our franchise left tackle for the next 10 years. Maybe he'll be able to do it. I just think there's a little bit of risk involved there. And then Sweat, like you talked about in a second, if I'm taking a player of red flags, it needs to be a player at an extreme position of value. And I don't think a run stuffing nose tackle is that big of a deal in the NFL in 2024. I don't think that he's the kind of guy he's not going to be Vita Vea, who can kind of do it all. He's just look, there's some value. If you're a DJ Reader and all your job is to stop the run in the middle and you're excellent and elite at it, there is value in that, but you need to be elite at that. And to use the 38th pick on a guy at that position, which I think is low value and also has red flags around him, I didn't like that. They didn't have a 3rd round pick. I could have gone lower here for the Titans, but I do like Latham's talent. I think he's going to work out. A little bit of concern there, but ultimately C for the Titans just because I didn't love what they did.
All right, so best and worst in the division. We differ on this because I think I'm going to go Texans as the best in the division, and maybe, I don't know, I'm stuck here. I might go Jags as worst in the division.
We're going to have a lot of different answers here then, I guess. Yes, I like the Colts as the best. I just like the chances they took. And we could look back and say those were some really smart gambles, especially Latu. I think Latu could be a great fit for them. I gave the Texans the worst grade, but as I sit here talking about, I might give the Titans the worst draft in the division. It's a toss-up for me. The Texans didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't have a lot of volume. I just didn't like what the Titans did with what they had. And Latham could work out and fill a position in need and be an all-pro for 5-10 years. He's going to have to be that, though, to save this draft class. So I'm going to kind of change my mind on the fly here and go Titans worst draft in the division.
We have saved the best for last. Go look the song up. All right. The last. Thank you very much. AFC West up last. And we're going in alphabetical order. So the best team.
We really are saving the best for last, aren't we?
We are saving the best
for people who tuned into this extra long podcast just to hear Fitz's thoughts on the Raiders draft. Well, you had to sit through the first 31.
You know what? Y'all time spent listening matters. Listen to the whole damn episode. We need that. All right. So the Denver Broncos first up. They take Bo Nix at 12. I said on this podcast a long time ago, Bo Nix was going to go 12. I've been told that multiple times by multiple insiders. I was not surprised by Bo Nix going 12. I think this is the ultimate. We give Sean Payton all the credit and the presumption that he can get it from there. They go Jonah Ellis, the edge rusher, later Troy Franklin, a wide receiver that unexplainably to most just absolutely plummeted in this draft process. Audric Estime, a running back out of Notre Dame that a lot of people like, and he goes in the 5th round. Like, I've seen some really harsh grades on the Denver Broncos. I do not share that opinion. To me, this is sort of a C draft that becomes an A if Bo Nix is at all who Sean Payton thinks he is. I thought this was okay by Denver.
Yeah, I gave the Broncos a C+, but obviously could get a lot higher if Bo Nix is as good as the Broncos hope he is. It's one of those where I think people just looked at it like, oh, the Broncos just settled. This is a Christian Ponder type pick, which I've talked about a lot, where it's kind of the epitome to me of, well, we need a quarterback. We got to draft one. He's the top one on the board. We know he's not worth number 12, but we got to take him. I don't know that Bo Nix is necessarily that bad. People have had scathing reviews of Bo Nix as a player. I like him. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's good at a lot of areas of the game. I think he's a great fit with Sean Payton, who obviously is an offensive genius. So I don't hate the Bo Nix pick, but obviously when you take the 6th quarterback off the board at number 12, there's going to be some questions. Did like some of their other picks. Estime was obviously a very good value pick. And Troy Franklin, like, wow, like that guy was there in the 4th, like smart pick for them. I think they really restocked the receiver room there. So I did like a lot of what they did. It just all depends on Nix. And right now, I don't know what to make of him. That's why I gave them a C+. It could get a lot higher if Nix hits, obviously. I don't know. We'll just see where Bo Nix goes. But I think the Broncos did the right thing. Take a shot on the quarterback. If we're in an era where if it doesn't work out, you just move on very quickly. You just don't care if you use the 12 pick on a quarterback. If he's not good, you just move on right away. And that's what the Broncos are going to do if Nix doesn't work out.
All right. So next up in alphabetical order would be like, I don't know what we're doing. Like it'd be the Chargers. The Chargers go next here. Good that I've got that pulled up. All right. The Chargers, by the way, if you get starters at every level in the first 3 rounds, you get an A from me. I think Joe Alt was absolutely, clearly, without a question, the best offensive lineman in this draft, and he's going to end up being one of the best offensive linemen we've seen drafted in years. I love Joe Alt. Ladd McConkey is somebody that I absolutely think is being undervalued, being taken at the top of the 2nd round, especially if you added in the production. He wasn't asked to contribute because of Brock Bowers. I think Ladd McConkey was a home run pick for Justin Herbert. And Junior Colson is a guy that if Harbaugh takes Colson in the 3rd, he knows Colson better than anybody in the world. So that speaks to exactly who he's getting there. I thought if your first 3 picks in the draft are all going to be day 1 impact starters, you get an A from me. I thought the Chargers got a home run for this draft.
Yeah, I thought the Chargers get an A too. I thought Jim Harbaugh's first draft was really, really good. Now, the question obviously is, how do we think about this draft if they drafted Malik Neighbors and Ladd McConkey? We'd be like, oh my goodness, what an exciting offense. Joel's not exciting necessarily, but he fits Harbaugh's philosophy. And I got to tip my cap to that. He really thinks having a foundation on the offensive line is what makes your team. With him, with Alton Slater, they have 2 top, maybe top 10 tackles in the NFL if Alt works out as we think he can. He's really, really talented guy. to me, there was top offensive lineman in this draft. So I'm not going to sit here and say the Chargers should have drafted Neighbors who Odunze. They certainly could have, but I thought they made up for it with Ladd McConkey. Very, very good player. Colson's fine. Couple cornerbacks after that. This is how you draft. You stick with your philosophy. You understand the needs of the modern NFL. Jim Harbaugh really did that by moving up and getting McConkey. The receiver room is not going to be empty. I gave the Chargers an A for this draft.
Yeah, 100%. Now the Chiefs, thanks to the Bills, move up to take Xavier Worthy, who we all know is lightning fast and exactly what they needed for their offense. They sit in the second round and they get I still can't figure out why he was falling, Kingsley Suamataia, the offensive tackle out of BYU, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. They get Jared Wiley, the tight end out of TCU, in the fourth round, who can develop with patience under the current tight end that none of us have ever heard of that they have. They get Jaden Hicks at safety in the fourth round. This is the Chiefs playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. This was an A+ draft for me.
A for me for the Chiefs as well. I think that the most interesting pick in the draft is Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. Might not be the best pick, might not turn out to be the home run I think it could be, but it is interesting to pair a guy with 4.21 speed with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Andy Reid probably hasn't slept since the draft, just drawing up plays for Xavier Worthy. But as I also wrote in Winners and Losers, he might not have had to drop any plays for Xavier Worthy. He just says, where's my Tyreek Hill playbook? Because I remember when I had the fastest guy in the field before, and he was an absolute superstar. I think I just love that. And as you talked about with Suamataia, did I get that right?
Yeah, Suamataia.
I thought the Chiefs could have picked him in the first round, 32 overall. I did a mock draft myself, didn't publish it. That's fine because it stunk. But I had Suamataia going in the 32nd to the Chiefs in the first round. For them to get him in the second, I thought it was an absolute steal. Jared Wiley, really big tight end. Yes, he could fill that Travis Kelce role. I love what the Chiefs did. I gave them an A because I just think, look, not every team was going to make Xavier Worthy a star. He's not that kind of guy. I think the Chiefs will make him a star because he's going to fit exactly what they can do on offense.
The last team in our entire exercise. Woo! Huh!
Finally.
I'm telling you.
What do you think? I really have not talked to you, so I'm wondering what you think about this draft.
I have spent years with the camera in my face when the Raiders make a pick, embarrassed that they picked somebody that nobody's ever heard of or didn't belong there. I refuse to, after spending years doing that, apologize for a single second about clearly the best player available being drafted by my favorite football team. Brock Bowers, I don't care about need right now. The Raiders are not competing with the Chiefs today. The Raiders are trying to figure out how to compete to get towards the playoffs while also building a roster. And I think you got a real identity of who Vegas is right now. Like Tom Telesco went into this draft and said, we are going to build the roster with best player available. Brock Bowers in this offense with Michael Mayer at tight end. Michael Mayer at tight end is going to give you a ton of opportunity with two tight end sets. Jacoby Myers is going to be there for a minute. We'll see what it all means for Devontae long term. I don't care. If you can't get to the quarterback that you want, give the quarterbacks you have better weapons. I thought that was beautifully done. Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round never should have been available in my mind. That is a great value pick. I think in the third round, Glaze out of Maryland might be a bit of a question mark, but Richardson, a corner, Eichenberg, the linebacker, these are all guys that made a lot of sense. And even in the seventh round, MJ Devonshire is somebody that I never thought would still be there. I thought in my exercises, he'd be a fifth round pick corner, right? So I just look at this across the board and there was a true identity. I give the draft a B overall because it's hard to be more praiseworthy than the Chargers and the Chiefs, who I thought absolutely nailed it. But man, other than the Delmar Glaze kid out of Maryland, that I think there's some real question marks about where that draft position was, I think Tom Telesco sat here and said, look, screw the board, screw what fans are going to yell, screw what anybody thinks. We are going to follow what we think the best player available is. And we're not going to overdraft for need. We're going to be patient. It was a work of art to me. And I have more confidence in the future of the Raiders right now than I've had in years because I felt like finally there was a competent GM making picks.
I think that's a great assessment, actually. I gave the Raiders a B because of, look, you can't give them an A because they didn't figure out the quarterback situation. That still is out there. It's still part of this grade. But I think once, like you said, once a quarterback's not there, you don't have this philosophy of, oh, we can't draft Brock Bowers because we don't have a quarterback yet. I hate when I hear that. No, you want your quarterback, whoever that quarterback of the future is in 2025, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or whoever it's going to be, he's going to step in and say, wow, I got Brock Bowers to throw it to. I have Jackson Powers Johnson in front of me blocking for me. I thought that it was really, really smart for them to make these picks. Obviously, I've talked about Brock Bowers a lot. He's the best college tight end I've ever seen. I think an A-plus prospect at the position. Yeah, you got Michael Mayer, but whatever. You figure it out. 2 tight end sets, you could make that work. I've seen teams do that before. And it just doesn't matter. That wasn't even the regime. This regime didn't pick him. So you don't pass on a really, really, really good tight end prospect just because you got somebody who the other regime picked. No, you just figure it out later. I like the Raiders just drafting best player available here. I think that Powers Johnson, I thought was a really excellent pick. I thought he was a first-round talent that slipped. Glaze could help them down the road. I thought this was a really good, solid draft by the Raiders. They'll figure out the quarterback situation down the road, but they didn't press. They didn't draft Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round or whatever it's going to be. They said, okay, well, this is what we got to do right now. And I applaud them for that and not stressing out, not making any bad picks just because of need. I give the Raiders a B. I thought they did the job they could do considering that all 6 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks.
Yeah, and not for nothing here, but like Aiden O'Connell is going to get another year's opportunity. I don't think he's the long-term answer, but let's see. And Gardner Minshew got paid enough for them to believe that he can be a bridge gap starter. And I would say, go back and watch the Colts last year. It took some offensive creativity, but Gardner Minshew had the Colts where they were throughout the course of the year, right? The Colts were far ahead of schedule. So now, if I'm looking to your point, whatever the quarterback position looks like for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years as they try and address it. For all we know, we're going to get to next offseason and Mark Davis is going to give Dak Prescott $60 million. Who knows? But what we know right now is that whatever quarterback comes in has so many weapons in front of him. And at some point, it's you got to figure out how to just continue to make your entire roster better. San Francisco did this for years where they said, you know what? The quarterback we want isn't there. We're going to just keep building the best roster available. And then when they took a chance on the quarterback and got it wrong, it didn't set them back because their entire roster was better. Best player available is the best way to build your team. And I think we just become so obsessed as a society with the quarterback will fix everything. Well, maybe, but if the quarterback that you're looking at isn't even close to available for you, then you got to go best player available. And you also can't just turn around and trade 18 years of draft picks to go get a guy and leave him on an island. Some of these quarterbacks are not going to work out because their teams weren't built the right way around them. We just have to remember that context.
And I think one more thing on the Raiders is they're not the Broncos. As you talked about, the Broncos could not sell their fans on going into a season with Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson. Like that, no, you need a quarterback somehow, some way. The Raiders aren't in that position. It's fully reasonable to give O'Connell another shot. It's perfectly fine if Minshew's your guy for a year. This was not a desperate situation where they had absolutely possibly nothing at quarterback. Do I love the Raiders quarterback room? No, of course I don't. But to your point, they didn't need to get crazy. They didn't need to just draft a quarterback just to have a quarterback. They're fine. They can patch it together for a year. And again, they'll come into the draft next year or free agency next year, as you talked about with Mark Davis and Dak Prescott or whatever it's going to be. You got to figure out the plan later. Quarterback. You didn't really need to stress out over it here.
That brings to an end the longest episode of Zero Blitz in history.
Wait, we didn't go best or worst in the AFC West.
Oh yeah, best or worst in the AFC West. Best I'll give the Chargers.
Yeah.
The best.
Me too.
And I will give the Broncos the worst.
Yeah, that's me too. It's close though between the Chargers and Chiefs. I think the Chiefs really did well here, but I just like what the Chargers did philosophically. And then the Broncos. I don't even hate the Broncos draft, but just the Bo Nix question, 6th quarterback off the board at number 12 overall. A lot of people really, really dislike Bo Nix, who are a lot smarter than me when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. So they got to be the worst now, but I don't hate it as much as everybody else.
You can follow us on Twitter at Frank Schwab, at Yahoo Schwab, I should say. Frank is at Yahoo Schwab. I'm at Jason Fitz. We got to work on that, Frank. At SJ Rochelle is our producer. That's Stone. He's going to have to edit all this together. So send him flowers or chocolates or something, because my God, leave us a 5-star review, rate, subscribe. You know the drill. Unless you hated the show, in which case just tweet Charles Robinson. It's all his fault. It's none of it's our fault. That's the most important thing. We're going to continue coming to you, I should say, throughout the course of the entire offseason. So don't go anywhere. Make sure that you're still following Zero Blitz. We will be hanging out with you every single week. The action is not stopping just because the NFL season gets a little break here. I mean, we've got schedule release to break down. So be sure you're still hanging out with us every single week. Tell your friends, family, enemies to hang out. Thanks for joining us for Zero Blitz.